Hello, this is Charlie McElveen. Welcome back to Organization 612, Nonprofit Executive Leadership and Board Development. This is week 2, and this is my weekly connect. So, week 2, the overview really is, if you think back to the Ministry, Vocation, and Calling course, you did a lot of self-discovery in that course. And in some ways, this week is going to be a little bit about that. It's going to connect back to that week. So one of the big questions is learning about yourself. So what am I learning about myself in a leadership context? So it certainly goes beyond the calling, but it does tap back into that kind of a discipline. And you're also going to be learning about organizations as well, having some curiosity along that line. So with critique and benchmarking, really the question is, what am I doing and what are they doing? Whether you're talking about another person, for instance, this week in your interview, and you're also wanting to know about what's that other organization doing as well. So it is a critique, thinking criticism, not in a negative capacity, but a critique, and then be able to compare those two things. And the goal really, it kind of a side goal of this is to be a learner and a critical thinker and think contextualizer. So, even when you interview another person about you personally or professionally as a leader or about your organization compared to their organization, it's the ability to think critically about that and be able to extract the nuggets and being able to contextualize what you're learning into your setting. Now, tips for successful completion of this week, I think far and above is to think application more than anything. So as you're interviewing, you have in the back of your mind, what do I need from this person considering my goals? So even as you're listening about their organization or about themselves, run it through that filter with the caveat that you have goals to consider as well. And then what can I apply from this interview specifically to myself, to my organization? And Brian Grazer, who is an author from Hollywood, he's a production dude, he's got this book out there called Curious. And it's really interesting because he just talks about living a curious life and being inquisitive. And if I would say what can help guide you in these interviews would be just a sense of curiosity. And so don't hesitate to pursue a rabbit trail or, pursue a line of question that may not seem particularly germane at the moment. Go ahead and run down that because you never know. There could be something really helpful that can fall out of that little rabbit trail. Now, one thing I did want to point out to be careful with, and in question 6 of the interview, the question reads, who typically advances into executive leadership in your organization? Now, this is you asking the other person that question. And then what causes them to stand out? Now, what I want you to be careful about, that oftentimes people that stand out in an organization are people that usually resonate with the things the evaluators feel are important. So if you're a leader in your organization, you're going to have a few things in your bucket or your quiver, characteristics that you think are really important. And they may vary from organization to organization. So a person that maybe doesn't share your particular wiring may not be perceived as a person that is going to advance into leadership because your bias can blind you to their skill set. So I just want you to be careful about that as you think about what has a person advancing in your interviewers or the person you're interviewing, their organization may not line up with what you see in your organization as being an important element. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Let's see here. The perspective for myself on this is that comparing myself to another person as far as the interview goes, or seeking out a professional mentor, or even comparing myself to another organization, it's just as important when things are going well as when they're not going well. So it's helpful to have kind of a constellation of people that that you have a professional relationship that you can speak with on a fairly routine basis. Maybe it's a quarter, maybe it's monthly, but having this constellation of people out there can help. Now, let me give you, for instance, when I was a chaplain at the Union Gospel Mission, Twin Cities, I always conducted meetings in a set pattern, and it's what I learned from corporate. And it was very focused on an agenda, and I moved through that agenda ruthlessly and relentlessly. And then this person suggested I read a book. And I liked that because they said, here, why don't you read this book and tell me what you think? And it was my second in command, so to speak. It was the assistant chaplain. And the book was really pivotal. It was called Death by Meeting. And that really changed how I viewed things. Now, that was 11 years ago. And still today, when I think about leading a meeting, that book, Death by Meeting by Patrick Lencioni, stays right in the back of my mind. It really has impacted and influenced how I go about leading meetings. All right, that's it for this week. One final note is when I grade forums, I'm going to grade your forum as soon as your initial posts come in. You're going to have a grade. That's not your final grade. Remember, that's the grade that you have accumulated up to that point in time. Each time you provide a submission or a response, I continue to add points. Remember, this is an accumulation-based grading system, not a deficit-based grading system. All right, I think that's it. If you need any questions answered, feel free to holler, and I'll see you next week. And if not, well, wait, tomorrow. I'll be seeing you tomorrow evening for our first Zoom session. All right, have a good day.